Okay, so you want to install OpenJDK and JGrasp. So number one, I do have a video that installs OpenJDK and uses Notepad++ as a simple Java editor. So in this video, we're just going to install OpenJDK really quickly, and then we'll just go ahead and install JGrasp and test it out, see if it works. So let's go ahead. First step is to, well, download both of them. Download the OpenJDK and also JGrasp. So it's just reaching over to the internet, and let's see, OpenJDK. So the OpenJDK is available for everybody. So it's similar to Oracle's JDK. The only difference being that the open one is by Red Hat, or by IBM really. They're sort of handling that, whereas the Oracle is more the official version of Java. But it really doesn't matter. They're both equally compatible. So the one that is being described here is the Java 18. So that is Java 18. You can see over here and up here. Whoops. Up here. So that's the version that we're going to download. So it'll be the Windows one. I've already gone ahead and downloaded it, but if you click on the zip file, and in my case Firefox asks me to download it, it'll usually put it in the downloads folder. If you're using Edge or if you're using Chrome, it'll put it in the same spot. So this will be the full zip. As mentioned in the other video, you're not actually installing OpenJDK as much as you're just putting it on the computer in Windows and then telling Windows where it is or where to point to it. So you're not actually doing a software integration. JGrasp, on the other hand, is an actual integration. So let's go take a look at the JGrasp homepage and figure out where we download from there. So you can assume that the OpenJDK already downloaded. It's sitting there waiting for us. So I'm going to click on the download section for JGrasp, scroll down just a little bit. You don't have to fill in any of the stuff up at the top if you don't want to. If you want to be all professional, you can, but it's not important at all. Now, there are two different versions for Windows. There really aren't two different versions. It's two different packaging. So the first packaging, which is just JGrasp. It doesn't include anything else. It's just the JGrasp integrated development environment, and that's it. So you'll see that there's a version for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. So the one we're talking about is for Windows. There's also another one, which is JGrasp, but it's bundled with OpenJDK 18, which is the same JDK 18 I just downloaded. So if you click on this, you'll end up downloading both the JDK and JGrasp. Now, I don't recommend this one, and the only reason I don't recommend it, well, aside from the fact that it's a much larger download, but downloads are downloads, the only difference is the place that it puts the OpenJDK is in the same spot on your computer that JGrasp is located. So if you're only ever going to use JGrasp, you're never going to use anything else Java related, this one's okay. But if you're going to do anything outside of JGrasp that includes Java, it's going to make your life a little more difficult. So my recommendation is download the OpenJDK, which is what we're going to manually install that one or move it in the right spot, and then also JGrasp. So again, with JGrasp, just the exe, we'll click on that. Now this is the installer, so this isn't just download it and run it. This is an actual installer, which does something to your Windows environment. It puts things in the right spot. So let's assume that I've clicked on Save File and we've downloaded it. So for all intents and purposes, we've got everything we need. So if I open up our downloads folder, you should see we've got the OpenJDK, which I downloaded, and then also JGrasp. So quickly, how do we install OpenJDK and get it running? Well, you could follow the previous video, or you could listen for a minute, and we can get it all figured out. So I'll just right-click on the OpenJDK. I'll do an extract all. I will turn off the show extracted when complete, so that is not checked, like not checked, and it's going to download it into the same folder under downloads that we're already looking at. So click on extract. It'll go ahead and do the extraction, and we will patiently watch it do that. I hope you're all being patient. All right, fantastic. So now you see that we've got a second folder here. So we'll open up that folder, and in here, this is the folder we're going to right click on and then copy it. So we're going to copy this folder. Now I've already gone ahead, because it's from the previous video, and I've created a folder called Java VM, so Java Virtual Machine, right off my C drive. You can create this folder anywhere you want, but creating it into a nice, easy spot. So if you can do it on the C drive on your computer, that's a perfect place to do it. Some computers, if your Windows is set up in a very secure manner, it may or may not let you actually create a folder here, or it might just come up and say, please confirm that we're creating a folder. If it doesn't work here, you could create it in your Documents folder. That's perfectly fine. I don't recommend doing it in Downloads, because that Downloads folder is always just a temporary place. You don't want to put anything permanent in your downloads. So Java VM, so you'll notice I copied that folder, so I'm going to come back here and paste it. So this is my Java development kit. So it includes the Java compiler and the Java runtime environment, or the Java virtual machine. So if we go in here, we've got all the various folders that are part of Java. So as far as we're concerned, we've actually, quote unquote, installed Java. Now we just need to make sure that Windows can point to it. So we've got to make a couple of settings for Windows. So I'm just going to go back to my Downloads folder. I'm going to leave this one on the screen, but I'm going to come up and take a look at my settings. And all the work that we need to do is inside our system variables. So I'm going to go down here, click on System Variables, and then Environment Variables. So there are two places here. The very top is the user variables. So this is your personal account. So when you log into Windows, these are the variables specific just to your account. But the ones we want to modify are the system variables. We want to make sure that we install Java not just for one user. We want to install it for any user, and really for the entire operating system to have available. So any software you install here that needs Java or references Java, we want to make sure it's available all the time. So don't put them up here in your user variable section. Do it down here. First thing we need to do is set up a specific variable that points to where the JDK is located. So we'll create a new one. This one is called Java_home. So this is a very specific variable that almost all programs that require Java will look for this variable, and that tells that program where the JDK is located. So we better tell Windows what value to put into that variable. So we'll come down here, we'll click on Browse Directory, and it is in that folder that I created. So if you scroll down, there we go. So we don't click any lower than that. So we just click on the C, the Java VM folder, and then JDK-18 and so on. That's as far as we need to go. So that's what we should see down here, is just the JDK folder name. So that's all we have. So we've created the Java home. Most programs, this is all they require in order to reference Java. But we need to make one more change for us. And this is just for adding the Java compiler and Java runtime environment as programs that are easily referenced. So we just need to make one small edit here. So we'll click on the execution path called path. We'll click on edit, go down to, go up to new. So you'll see it's got a spot. We'll click on browse, and we'll do exactly the same thing as we did before, except now, instead of staying at the JDK folder, we go one lower. We go to the bin folder. So what we should see here is just bin. It really is referencing the whole folder structure, but that is the folder that we want. We'll click OK, and you'll see it's loaded up C:\JVM, JDK, and so on. Click on OK there. So we've added it to the path. And this path is rather long, as you noticed. This is wherever Windows is actually looking for programs that it requires. So this is the entire structure. If we added another program in Windows and we needed to reference it, we could put it in here. So let's click on OK. Click on OK there. And as far as we're concerned, Everything is installed just fine for Java. Let's do a really quick test here. We'll open up a command window, a command prompt window. All we need to do is type in java-version, and it's telling us version 18, which is perfect. And the reason I can actually just type in the Java and the javac commands is because I added them to the path. So that's the most important thing. I've added them to the path. So there we go, and the Java compiler. And the Java home is actually in here. If we type in the set command, we should be able to scroll up and see Java home right there. So there's our other variable. Excellent. So Java is now set up. Let's go ahead and finally install JGrasp. So we'll double click on the JGrasp installer that I downloaded. Go through the motions here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and read it very quickly. Now there's a couple of check items. There's no real need to checkmark admin items. If you do checkmark it, there will be a prompt for another folder name where, unless you know exactly what you're putting into that folder, it's not really useful. So the only real reason is to just put a check mark next to desktop, so we have a quick way to execute JGrasp. It's also inside the system menu when you click start, so it's not like JGrasp will be lost. And it's going to put it into the program files x86, and we'll just click next. Now at this point, you could, if you wanted to turn off all of these check marks. So what this is doing is it's saying what what files do we want to associate with the JGrasp program. So you'll notice we've got .java, .m, .h, .hpp, and so on and so on and so on. And why are there so many? Well, JGrasp is not just to edit and run Java programs. It does C, C++ programs, it does Python programs, I believe it does XML and HTML, and I think a couple more. So really, it's a very flexible editor. But if you want to check these off or check them on, it doesn't really matter. When you start up JGrasp, when you're in the editor, then you can do whatever you want. You can load up files, you can edit them. This is only if you're going to double click on a file. Do you want JGrasp to be the program that starts up? But I'm going to leave them the way it is. I'm going to assume that JGrasp is the only real program I'm using when it comes to Java programming. So it's going ahead and it's finished. And you'll notice that we have a JGrasp icon on the desktop. So let me close this down and bring up JGrasp. So I'm just going to double click on it. There we go. Now, normally when it comes up, if you were running it for the very first time, and unfortunately for this one, I've installed it and run it a few times, it will come up and say, which interface do you want to use? So do you want to use the Windows standard or the CDE standard window? I let you choose which one. My recommendations would be the Windows, not the Windows Classic, but the Windows. There's also a dark one called Metal Dark, low contrast, which is very popular because it's sort of almost the reverse. Everything that's white is black, and I think red is green, that type of thing. So it just sort of reverses some of the colors. I could be making stuff up. You can modify that screen after you've come in. So if you come in here, you can see that in the settings look and feel, we've got all the various different forms. So Windows is, as I said, a very popular one because it's basically using the Windows standard. If we click on the Metal Dark, you can see how nice and dark it is. A lot of programmers seem to like that one. The one I probably wouldn't recommend that you choose is probably the high contrast one. Might give you a bit of a headache. And let me set it back to, let's see, Nimbus is a nice smooth one. It's very Linux based. So if you're using JGrasp on Linux, this is probably it's a very, very neat one to use. You know what? I'm going to leave it at this one. I usually put it at the Windows one, but we'll leave it at this. So a couple of things to do right away. If we click on Settings and then click on Colors, good one. It's just to get us into this Settings window right here. and then we'll click on CSD. So even before we do any programming, it's just to set up JGrasp in just the right way. So there's a couple of things to actually turn on and make sure that they're turned on. So the first one is the soft tabs. Usually it might come in here, and the setting is usually set to 3. The standard for Java for indent level is usually 4 or 5. 3 doesn't seem to be that popular, so I usually like to set it to 5, and then I'll make sure that I've got a check mark next to soft tabs. So you'll see that the layout is making sure you have a check mark. If there's just a dot, that means it's using the default, and we don't want to do the default. We want to override it. So we'll click on the dot to get rid of it, and you'll notice I've turned on my interest statement align, my indent braces, my soft tabs, my brace matching, my auto indent, and force new lines. You'll get familiar with how some of these work, and actually, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure all of them work the way that JGrasp is intended, but JGrasp is an evolving IDE. It's very, very useful, and they're constantly making improvements. So I think they've added a couple of future features that they haven't fully implemented. So we'll click on Apply, and then we'll click on OK. So let's open up a program and actually start writing it. So I think I've already got. Let's see. I've already got in my Documents folder another folder called Java Programming, and I created this on my own. So let me just bring up the File Explorer. We'll click on Documents, and you'll see that there's a Java Programming folder. This one I just created myself. I just went in and created a brand new folder called Java Programming. And in here, I've actually got, from some practice, HelloWorld.java and the class. So what I'm going to do is delete these two, because I want to start a brand new one. So let's minimize this. I'm going to cancel this, because I want to start a brand new program. So you'll notice with JGrasp, you have Java, which is JGrasp. It's called JGrasp because it's intent for Java. But there are some other ones. Oh, and here are all the various program types that JGrasp understands. So A to 95, C, C++, VHDL, which I really can't remember what it stands for. But we have Extensible Markup Language, Objective-C, which is an older style of C language that was very popular by Apple for programming the first iPhones, I think, Objective-C. Python and plain text. Plain text is just a simple editor. It's as though you're using Windows Notepad. Nothing special, it's just for plain files. JGrasp is a programmer's editor, which means you're not just going to be using it for Java. You could use it for any type of file, but it's not a word processor. Don't confuse it with that. This is just a text editor that understands how some of the syntax for languages work. So in this case, let's make sure we're going to start a brand new Java program. And the first thing I ever do when I start a brand new program like this is I save it. So I'm going to do a file save as, and we'll put it into my Java programming, and I'm going to call it Hello World. Now I don't have to put a .java at the end. I could if I want. There's nothing stopping me, and it's actually okay. But JGrasp understands that it's a Java file, so it's going to ahead and do that. The format on the side, you can leave it as it is. We are programming in Windows, so that's really DOS format. It really makes no difference to which style. So my recommendation is to leave it as to whatever JGrasp is set to. So in this case, we're in Windows, DOS format is fine. There are some other features up here. You can create brand new folders. You can move around the folder structure instead of doing it solely through a pull down. You can do some manipulation up here. But all I needed to do was type in my file name, Hello World, and you'll notice that the upper and lowercase, that's very important for Java, choosing the actual names of things, but you'll learn that when you're actually starting to program in Java. So let's write our very first Java program. So let me put a comment in here. So Hello World, my very first Java program. Hello World is probably the most popular name for the very first program that every programmer writes. And it's not intended to make fun of programmers that this is a simple program, but it's really the shortest program you can write that displays a piece of information to the screen and executes. So it's a really quick way to test that your compiler and your executor and your whole environment is working right. In many languages, Hello World is literally one line of code, which is just display Hello World. In Java, there's a bit more. So I've got my public class Hello World. I've got my brace in there. Now in JGrasp, to do an indent, you have to do it manually. I haven't figured out a way that you can do it automatically. So if you're going to indent, usually you'll hit a tab. Now it is set up to insert spaces. So you'll notice that 5 spaces went in. Why 5 spaces? Well, if you remember when we went back to our CSD here, we set up our tab size to 5 spaces. And the soft tabs, what it does is it replaces, instead of having a single tab character, it actually put in 5 spaces. So that's actually important, especially if you're moving files between the JGrasp environment and another editor, or you're sending a file to somebody. Tabs cause problems in the file. So having only spaces is the best. So I've spaced over 5. It's the same as typing in 5 spaces on the spacebar. So public static void main string args is my method header for the main method. I'm going to put another brace, hit another tab because now I'm inside the main method. And here's my single statement, which will display Hello World to the screen. Now you'll notice when I hit my end brace for this one, it doesn't line up under the other one. And that's because JGrasp doesn't automatically do that. So you just have to backspace over or move the arrow key and just make sure you line up appropriately. So there we go. There's our program. Now you'll notice things are color-coded. So the comment up here is in red. We've got Hello World, which is a string in green. We've got some commands in purple. And that's because JGrasp is a full integrated development environment, and it does color code your statements. There really is no color as part of the code, but JGrasp understands Java syntax. So it color codes for you to help you understand where things start and where things end. So you'll notice up here where we've got the string, if I take out that first quote, things become black because now JGrasp is going, I don't know if that's a string or not. So there you go. You'll get familiar with all the various color coding features and so on. But let's actually compile our program. So up here, there's a green plus. That green plus means compile. If we go back and look at our folder now, you'll notice inside my Java programming, there's a helloworld.java file. Well, that's the file that I saved initially, like the file name. So in here, we've got the source code file. So if I come up here, I hit my compile. I don't have to save with JGrasp. I don't have to come up here and do a save. I can if I want. But every time you hit compile, whoop, I didn't want to hit that. Every time you hit compile, it automatically saves for you. So we hit compile, and you'll see down here it's actually doing the compilation and that it's complete and there's no errors. We go back over to our folder, you'll notice now we've got a brand new file here called helloworld.class. So the .java file was compiled and it became a .class file. So how do we run that .class file? Well, there's another button right next to the compile, which is the run button. So we click on the run button, and now you see Hello World. So congratulations, you've got Java installed, you've got JGrasp installed, you've written your very first program, which is Hello World. We've compiled it, and we've run it. And one final thing to show you. You'll get familiar with how to move the screen around as well. Let's introduce an error. So what I'm going to do is take out the semicolon at the end. Let me just line things up because they moved. So I deleted the semicolon. I'm going to try and compile it, and we should get an error just to see where the errors show up. And there we go. There's the error message. Now you'll notice that it's telling us that an error happened, and it's highlighting the error. One of the best things you can do, especially if you've got more than one error, is to turn on your line numbering. So I needed a good reason to have of why we turn on our line numbering. So if we go down here, where do we turn on the line numbering? I have completely forgotten where to turn on our line numbering. I think I must be blind because that was just there. There we go, line numbers. Turn on your line numbers. So line numbers are very useful, especially if you've got more than one error, or if you've got something indicating which line number. You might not just have 9 or 8 lines of your program. There might be a few hundred lines, so it's very useful to do that. So let me try one more compile here. Yeah, so it's showing us the error, and you'll notice that it is highlighted properly within JGrasp. If there is more than one error, I believe you can actually look through it. So let's introduce one more error. So there we go, we've got 2 errors, and you'll notice that the first error is indicated on that line, but if we click on the next error, it highlights the other line. But you will also notice we've got a 6 there. So that 6 and that 4 is indicating the line numbers. So again, reason to turn on your line numbers. All right, let me just fix my errors. Do one last compile. I never like to leave a program that isn't working properly, and then run it. And there's our hello world. So congratulations. I'm going to close all this down. You've got everything running, and you're ready to start programming in Java. Good luck.